Hello, this is Vaughn Clement, and this is a tour of A1 Restaurant Management. This is a new application that was made from scratch. This is about an 8-month process developing this application. The tour we're going to give you is a view of what this application can do, but it's not the details. Let's start on the main menu screen. If you need support, there is a support icon. You can go directly to the developer support site. This is the home screen. The icons represent the different main screens. Below the double black lines these are tables that you can look up and do printouts of the information that you want from either one of these screens. And down here there are reports that you have access to. There are additional screens that are accessible from the individual screens that we show here. Let's start out by saying that when this application is used, you have to initially set up the inventory, create the purchase order for your initial inventory, add vendors, eventually adding customers that are for things like parties, weddings, and other events that you would have at your restaurant or away from your restaurant where you're catering. And then orders, where you actually take the sales and do the menu item preparation within your restaurant. Now, one of the things that is covered in the user guide is the information about all these screens in very much detail. So I suggest the first thing you want to do is to go download the user guide off the support site and then go through if you want the detailed information on this application. This application is primarily used on a web server where the application itself would be used to have multi-user access. For example, if you're looking at the preparation where we're going into the inventory system, you would want to pull from the inventory and have access to it from all the different nodes that you would be using within your restaurant. Typically, there would be servers, there would be somebody at the bar, and then there would be a maitre d', and then there would be a kitchen aspect to this whole thing. It's your choice on hardware and how you want to implement that. I do offer some suggestions and cost savings if you're interested. If you're looking at this application as I'm going through it, you'll notice that there are things that I say you can do and customize to add more capabilities to this application. Right now we're in the setup screen. Basically in the setup screen we're managing the inventory and adding both inventory items for menu items and inventory items that you use in the preparation of food and in running your business. So there would be one record each for the items that you're going to put into your menu items. For example, we have an example here where the menu code is an appetizer and it's 01. If you're familiar with the way a Chinese restaurant puts numbers on their items on their menu, basically what you're doing in this application is assigning a menu code to all items that are served in your restaurant. In addition, you have your materials that you're using to prepare and maintain your business that also have menu item information as far as the menu code. In this screen, you're basically adding the information for the menu and the menu item and the price. It'll automatically calculate some of these things, like the average price is a combination of every time this is sold, and you can see over here there's different prices that this might be sold at. The inventory control is a part of purchasing and the usage in your orders, and it's tracked here, where if you have so many items in stock and you use so many, it's going to keep track and show you your balance. There is a drop down here that is used to pick a vendor for this primary item and information you can add about the vendor. There are notes about the actual item if you want to comment on the usage and or ingredients or anything about the actual item itself. In this case, we're looking at a field that we added a picture to. This can be done if you have an iPad or a camera. You can take pictures of your actual servings of the item and then go ahead and put that picture into here. I do have a note in here about on the iPad to keep the graphics under 400 kilobytes to improve the speed of showing these on your iPad or whatever you're using to with your servers. There's also an inventory report in this screen and an inventory table to see what all the items are in your menu structure. This section down in here is every time an invoice is done for this particular meal item or an inventory item, it will automatically tell you what the date was, what the cost was that it was sold at, what the item is and its menu code, and what the total sum of the invoice was. If you click on this button, it'll take you to the invoice or whatever invoice that you're picking. In this case, we had invoice 1 and 2, and if you click on this button, it'll take you to that invoice. Here's the total for sales for these items and the count of how many were sold. This area right here is the find, which is like a search and a perform find button. If you do a find, it'll make all the fields in this screen show question marks, and then when you do the perform find, it'll automatically go out and look at those items and show them on the screen. One or more items could show depending on what you're searching by. This is great to find different things that are in your inventory system very quickly. The field at the top is a combination of information from here that includes the code, the actual item, and the dollar value of the serving. Let's move on now to the purchase order screen. In the purchase order screen, there are two particular ways to print this. You can either print it with a PO print, which is a regular invoice-looking print, where it is only a certain number of lines it can print, up to 24. And then there's a long print, which can print an unlimited number of menu items or items that you're purchasing. The purchase order works where you pick a vendor. Once you pick the vendor, it'll occupy all these fields, and on the actual purchase order, it'll fill those in as well. The server would put in who they are. This will automatically, as soon as you create a new record here, will automatically add the date and time of the actual purchase order. This area here is where you put your information for your business, that's your restaurant name and information for your address. Down here, these are automatic calculations that are taken from the information down here. Line totals is all these items here. The shipping cost is added independently at this location for all the items that are being shipped that the vendor has provided you information for shipping. And then there's the sum of the PO, which is the line total plus shipping and the total invoice for the PO cost. This will take you into the portal record where you can look at the individual records, edit, and let's take a quick look for one reason. You can do RMAs in this area, and you can also receive items within this screen. This is the basic information for the item you just ordered. Let's go back into the purchase order again. In the purchase order, you can also make the payments after you make the order and you receive the billing. You can go ahead and show the payment here, in this case the check and the check number, and you can do as many payments as you have to on one PO, and this is for each PO record. If you pick a vendor, the vendor information for contacts at that company are added here, and if you pick a vendor, it'll automatically populate this portal showing you those vendors. There is a purchase table and a purchase report. In this case, let's just show the purchase report quickly. The purchase report summarizes all the purchases by purchase order number and the items that were in that purchase order. If you do a find just for one purchase order, you can print out the listing for the purchase order showing the items that are in that purchase order. When you receive the purchase items, you can come into this screen and put the date that they were received, the quantity that was received, and it'll automatically calculate the balance that was owed. If you had an RMA for missing or damaged items, you would subsequently put an RMA in to cover the cost and value of the items that's missing. Let's go back to the orders record. And in this case, we're looking at the items that were ordered. Let's go ahead and say that there is a notes place. If you need to write a note about this particular purchase order that's important about the product that was ordered, go ahead and use this information here. If you want to preview the purchase order, you click on this button up here, and then you can add a status here as to what the current status is on this order, whether it's a quote, ordered, shipped, processed, or call-in order or whatever. In the actual print version of the invoice, you can see that it's a nice clean screen. You can do a find in here if you need to find a particular invoice. And on the long invoice, if you're looking at the long invoice, In this screen, you need to do a find and pick the purchase order number from this top when you're in the find mode. Let's do that so you can see. Pick the purchase order number, and what it'll do when you say perform find, it'll populate the screen with the items from that purchase order. And you can do that for any purchase order within the system. It just depends on if it's a long one or a short form. Let's go back to the main screen. We've covered the setup. We've covered the purchase order. Now let's go look at the customer very quickly. The customer is information where the customer is added. If you're doing catering or an event, this gives you the direct location to find it in MapQuest if you're going to a certain location where the particular client is going to be that you're going to be doing the special event for. There's also an area over here to add comments. Let's go ahead and look at the next. We'll go to the order screen. On the order screen, there are actually two versions of the order screen. The one has all the information at the top and down the side, and this is for normally on a desktop computer. If you want to switch between this screen and another one, you click on Order Big, and what this is larger lines for on a tablet or a phone so you can get a better view and be able to touch better on these fields. And all the information has been shifted over to the right-hand side. This information is basically the order for each line item that the client is going to order. There is a point system, basically the point on the table where the person is sitting, where you can add the number in the rotation around. And for example, this is order number 1 or number 2 for this table for 2 people that are sitting at the table, a party of 2. If you're adding the quantity, you add the quantity, then you put in, you can see from the inventory, it'll show you the standard cost. If you click on the standard cost yellow field, it'll automatically populate this field, which is the actual price. Once you do that, it'll do a subtotal. You can add the tax unless it's a default. You can put in defaults. It'll calculate the tax or VAT, and then it'll give you the line total. One of the other features of this system is that if you click on the small icon at the edge of the screen and you're trying to show somebody who's ordering this item, it will give you a blow-up view and the food description, the side orders that are possible, and special ingredients if you want to show that. To get away from this screen, you go ahead and click at the top. There's a close window button. It brings you back to this screen. This is where you actually take the payments based on whatever the invoice balances are. In this case, here's the invoice sum that goes here. The sum to be paid is here. And then the balance will show, it'll be calculated. You can put in the payment type and a check or a credit card information. Down here, there's a status for the table that can either be used at the maitre d' area or by the server to change the status of the table during the time that it's occupied. There's also a report that this button takes you to that could be used at the maitre d' area to show all the tables and their occupancy and the time that they've been sitting at the table and what the latest status is. There is a thing for taking tips. You can either take the tips and put them in there, your choice as far as cash tips, but if you do take credit card tips, this information can be used in this report over here to close out the shift where you pay the employee for those tips. This area over here is to show you the bill payment. You add the amount of money received from the customer and it'll give you the change. And this is for notes down here. Let's go back to the home screen. There are 2 things left to show you. This is overhead expenses. This is all items that are not invoiced or items that are purchased from a customer. And this tracks all the accounts payable items that you need to track on a monthly basis and summarizes them in a report. And there's also a graph to summarize them as well. Let's go back to the expense screen. And then there's also a expense report. Let's go to the last screen, which is the account ledger. The account ledger is a cash flow calculator that basically takes all income and expenses for all these portals. For example, this is invoices, this is expenses from the expense screen, and then this is all purchase orders. It takes the initial value of your bank balance and starts a process where it calculates your cash flow. And in this case, it's not in the black, but there are very few invoices that have been put in the sample records that are in the system. Now, this is a short tour of this application. I hope it's helpful. And if you need more information, please go review the user guide for more detailed description.